So excited to have everyone here. I'm Andrea. I am the New York City chapter lead at Products That Count, and I also am the VP of Product and Engineering at One Kings Lane. How many of you have been to an event before tonight? More hands, more hands. This is awesome. Okay, so for those who haven't, I'll just talk a little bit about Products That Count. So Products That Count is a community of about 17,000 and growing product managers, entrepreneurs, etc. It started in the Bay Area, and we have a lot of rich programming like this monthly speaker series. It's since expanded to New York City, Seattle, and San Jose. So it really is growing. Aside from the monthly speaker series, we have articles, podcasts, and executive salons. And really the goal of Products That Count, just like for all product managers, is we're passionate about building products. And so how do we create products that are great, or products that count? And so what we do with our monthly speaker series is we bring in high caliber speakers like Alex tonight to talk about things, talk about topics that resonate with us as product managers. Before we get started and I introduce Alex, I just also want to thank DigitalOcean. They are an amazing partner. They are the cloud computing. This is their space. They host us every month, and we're very, very grateful. So round of applause for DigitalOcean. They also provide the food and the drinks. All right, so I want to introduce Alex, our speaker tonight. So Alex Mccallum is the head of new ventures and products at the New York Times. So that means she runs cooking and crossword products and businesses, as well as new product development. Prior to that, she was at Huffington Post, so we're really, really lucky to have her tonight. She'll be talking about the innovation that happened at the New York Times. I'm just going to quickly move to that. So let's give her a round of applause. Welcome, Alex.
Hi everyone, I am Alex. Tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about the new products team. But before I even get into a background about what I've done specifically at the Times, I think it's helpful to have a little context on what the Times has gone through in the last 5 years, 5 to 7 years. The Times is obviously a world-class newspaper, but it even 5 years ago was a print newspaper. Like, that was the main product that we put out, and it was supported by print advertising revenue. And over the last 5 years, digital products have become increasingly important, and our revenue is a totally different business model. We make most of our money now through digital subscriptions, a combination of digital and print subscriptions, but a huge number of digital subscriptions. We have over 2.8 million digital subscribers at this point. So that transformation has happened while we're putting out an incredible newspaper every day. And I think it's just helpful to know because the organization has changed pretty dramatically. And we've been trying to innovate while changing the organization. So I've done a bunch of different things. 5 years ago, I worked on building and launching the first cooking product. So I was the product leader. And this is very familiar to all of you. But at the time, it was the first time we had a product person, a technology lead, a design lead, a project lead, and an editorial lead, all teaming up to come collaboratively together up with a product vision, testing, learning from what we were testing, and iterating. And we really hadn't used that process before. Again, it was probably something that is very familiar to all of you, but we really created a model within the company. I then moved. One of the big things that happened after the innovation report was leaked, I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but it was a big look at basically how do we need to rethink how we set up the New York Times newsroom for a digital age. And it was leaked, and one of the big recommendations was setting up an audience development team, we called it, in the newsroom, to help the newsroom really think through how do we reach audiences more effectively How do we create tools to do it more easily? How do we think about off-platform reading, which was something that was obviously quite large and growing dramatically at the time? How do we think about mobile first? A lot of different things. It was kind of a broad strategic team in addition to a bunch of tactical functions like SEO, social, etc. And I built that team in the newsroom, which was a really great experience. And then was asked by Dean Baquet, the editor of the Times, to oversee the video operation when I returned from my first maternity leave. So I oversaw video, and then I came back from another maternity leave last September and was asked to take over the new products group. And then this is just way back in the day, fun fact, I was the first employee of the Huffington Post and worked on the news side way back in the day before kind of working on the business side, which is what I'm focused on now. So a little bit about the new products team. I think it's helpful when we talk about innovation, sometimes we can mean different things. Our group is not an R&D group. We do have an R&D group. They're amazing, and they're really thinking about transformational changes. We're thinking about adjacent products. So like how can we actually expand our business into incremental products that can reach incremental audiences. So we have the cooking product and the crosswords product, which we run as standalone products, and they have their own P&Ls, and we run them as their own separate business units, essentially. And then as we think about new product development, we're thinking a lot about how do we develop other things that also can kind of complement our suite of non-news products. And then our guiding principle with every product is how do we make something that's really delightful and fun for users. We need to always be business oriented in the way that we're thinking about it. And how do we take advantage of what the Times offers? So here's a little bit about what we'll talk about and what basically the new products team works on. We have a bunch of different product stages and some operating principles, and I thought just like for those of you who work at big companies, some of the operating principles could be helpful. And then a little bit about how we think about early stage development, and then a very short couple slides on late stage development. So these are the products that we have right now. Crosswords is mature. It's been around for a number of years. It has a big subscription base. And in 2018, we're thinking about growing our crosswords business from the crossword puzzles to expanding into puzzles more broadly. Kelsey is here, who works on the crosswords team, and they just launched Spelling Bee a couple weeks ago, which is our first new game that we're adding to the crosswords experience to try to make it more of a puzzles product, which we're really excited about. Mid-stage cooking, we launched the paywall now 9 months ago, and it's been a big success, but we're really trying to learn kind of how do the mechanics of this business work, how do we drive it, and then how do we build more value into the product for our users. And then early stage, so yesterday we announced that we were going to expand into parenting as our next product area. And we have a cross-functional team that we've hired to tackle that area. And they're going to be working on developing a product from the ground up. So the three things that have been really helpful for our teams for making them successful, the first is that every function, including editorial and design, is at least aware of our business performance. So even if they're not accountable for it, they feel some responsibility for the thing actually doing well as a business unit. The second thing is the teams own their roadmaps and they can make their own trade-off decisions. So I think that's something that allows our teams to move a lot more quickly than the rest of the New York Times organization. And kind of to that, the fewer stakeholders, the better. So we've tried to restructure our team so that we have fewer kind of like layers of management. Again, this is specific to big organizations, but that can really slow processes down. And so we've tried to eliminate some layers. And then the last thing is clarity of strategy and levers. So we're just very clear that we're a subscription business first. I think the cooking team, this is something that has been helpful for 2018 for us. Cooking makes money through a partnership through Chef, which is like a meal delivery service that competes with Blue Apron. They have a cookbook business. They make some money with advertising, but All of that takes up a lot of the team's time, and a subscription business first really allows us to think about what is most beneficial for our users that are using our digital product every day, and it's allowed us to kind of hone in on that. So early stage product development, parenting is the next thing we're tackling, and I thought it would be helpful to maybe walk through how we chose it and then how we're gonna, how we just develop new products at the times. So first thing is we looked at the market landscape. We wanted to make sure that we thought that there was some kind of revenue opportunity in the space. The second thing is business model. So we're a subscription business model. We're a subscription business first, and we had a preference for a subscription-based business model. The third thing was, do we have some kind of advantage in this space? Can we bring something to it? So you know, we didn't think that we had, it was one of the things that a number of people internally were excited about when I came back last September was beauty, because it reaches an audience that we thought was really valuable for the Times, younger women. But the New York Times doesn't really have a clear advantage in the beauty space, like pro makeup tips from the New York Times didn't really sound something that didn't really kind of land for our team. And then user needs. So are there clear unmet needs in the space that are recurring enough to drive a habit? And the habit thing is really important too. One of the other areas we looked at was travel. We didn't think that people traveled regularly enough for it to support a subscription business model. We thought that it was something people needed to do or had a need around pretty regularly. So that was also like a helpful thing for filtering some of the areas that we looked at. So why parenting? We looked at 20 different areas, 15 to 20 different areas, and parenting really stood out to us. So the market landscape, it's a really big market. It's driven by guidance and utility, which are things that we feel that we can deliver. We think that there's a possibility of a subscription business model because there's a regular need for information. Products and user needs. So we generally thought that there was a dearth of really high quality information, and there is this regular need. And in general, this kind of reminded me of the cooking space back in the day. There was Epicurious and All Recipes and a number of really excellent food blogs. There were just like recipes available for free everywhere, and there was a lot of skepticism that we could actually make something work and have, you know, a digital paid product for recipes. But a lot of the high quality information was in cookbooks. Parenting is a similar landscape. So there's a lot of high quality information in books, and there's a lot of free information that isn't as high quality online. So we thought that there was something interesting there for us. And then New York Times Advantage. So, you know, our brand stands for authority, and it's trusted. Those are two things that are obviously really important in the space. And then in terms of you know, some internal data that we looked at, it's an area that our users have actually asked us to cover. So we hired a team, and we're really excited about the team that's starting. Most of them have started already, but they're just we made sure that we had, this is maybe the kind of key thing that we've really tried to think through. It's important at the Times, at a big organization, to kind of know the organization. There's a lot of like artisanal processes and you know, dynamics, and so we have some internal people who are on the team, Barbara and Vanya, and then we also have hired externally for a few of the disciplines. So process for creating new products, I'll just kind of quickly go through. We kind of do a bunch of work, which I gave you guys the highlights of what area should we tackle. And then the team starts, and we do a human-centered design process, which we call discovery. And the goal of that process is to come back with a very clear product vision. We then build a prototype, or a number of prototypes, and we test and we validate, do we think that this concept is actually meeting user needs, and like where do we need to refine it to make sure it does actually meet user needs. And then, you know, based on that refinement, we tackle building a beta version of the product, a beta or an MVP version of the product, and we release that into the wild, and we try to understand, do we see some kind of product market fit? And then I have finally begin testing with monetization options for users. We do kind of like the heavy lifting of monetization after the beta release of the product, but I would just say that at least for cooking, we thought about the monetization strategy from the start, and I'll give you guys a couple examples of that, but it influenced how we thought about building the product, and so I think it was helpful to just, at the very least, know that like, we are going to charge for this thing, so we need to deliver a ton of value to people to make it so they feel like it's substantial enough. And how do we get to like delivering all of that value? So a quick process of, we went, and this is a little bit of the discovery process. We went out, we had a, the different kinds of segments of cooks that we wanted to reach, and we watched them look for recipes, actually shop in stores, and then actually cook meals. And it was a very interesting process. One of my friends here knows a lot of these people. But we did a lot of work with friends and family initially. And from that, we developed a bunch of value propositions. And then we brought in a lot of different people into the Times and tested the different value propositions with them and started refining based on the feedback we got from people to get us to a product vision. And this was our original product vision, which is still very much what the product delivers on. So the first thing is inspiration, inspire me to cook. So people were having a lot of trouble like actually making a decision, and they wanted something that felt like exciting to make every night, or to make whenever they were cooking. The second thing was, help me find what I'm looking for. So like, I have asparagus in my fridge, what do I do with it? And that was a big a pain point. There weren't a lot of like high quality search experiences. The third was keep all my stuff in one place. So people had crazy systems for organizing their recipes. They had like newspaper cutouts, magazine cutouts, they're stuffed in cookbooks, they were in little wooden boxes, they were saving things digitally haphazardly. And so, another thing was people need some kind of organizational system, and we thought that we could meet that need. And then the last thing, and we're still really working on this one, is make cooking accessible for me. So, so people, the New York Times in particular seemed kind of intimidating. We use ingredients people have never heard of, recipes that are like take 4 hours or more, and so there was a need to try to kind of make it a little bit easier for people. So cooking process, so I included one of our early prototype designs, and then what our beta product looked like and our beta release. And we did this over the course of 9 months. So we did a prototype in 3 months, and then did a lot of the testing of it over the following 2 months, refined it, and then released the beta 9 months after we started work. And this is what the product originally looked like. This is what it looks like now. It looks a lot better. That's good. But ultimately, it still kind of meets the same needs, just in a lot in a stronger way. So business model. This is like a really, really horrible looking slide that I was responsible for making years ago now. But the reason I bring this up is that the Times, I really think that like the product itself and the business model are totally it's really important. They're kind of inextricably linked. And at the time, the New York Times, it has a metered pay model. So you get 10 articles. At the time, you got 10 articles for free every month, and then the meter reset. And that just like wasn't a model that we thought would work for cooking, 10 recipes free and then reset. We thought that probably we were giving too much away for free if we did that. We weren't sure that recipes were going to be the most valuable thing for users. So we came up with so stepping back, we thought a metered model probably doesn't make sense for this. We think we should look at freemium models for inspiration. And then we started trying to think about how could we test product features versus premium content, and how do we like figure out what the most valuable thing for users is. So we did a bunch of testing about this, and ultimately, the outcome when we implemented the paywall, and I had moved on from the team at this point, but they settled on a free trial model. So it's actually an entirely paid product, but you get 30 days of free access, and then you need to become a subscriber to use it further. So that's kind of the evolution of a new product, and that's something we hope to do a way better job of with the parenting team. I know they will do a better job of it. They're just like total pros. We were really just figuring it out at the time. So that's new product development, and that's how we kind of think about innovation. With cooking and crosswords, so I ran through this today quickly, and somebody asked me what this thing was, and I was like, that's a really good question. It looks like a martini glass, but it actually stands for these optimize, add value to the product experience, and foundational work. But we think about our OKRs in 3 buckets. And optimization, I'll really just talk about optimization and adding value to the product experience. So giving an example for cooking, for optimization, each quarter we try to look at optimizing different parts of the funnel. And so this quarter we're trying to get people who are registered users of the cooking product to subscribe. And we have a very specific metric we're trying to move, by percentage lift that we're trying to generate. And so we're doing a number of tests on our actual pay flows to try to move that metric. We also have a separate stream of work for both cooking and crosswords, but I'll give a crosswords example of adding value to the user experience. And so Kelsey is responsible for a lot of this, but there's a prototyping team on the crosswords team that is thinking about new puzzles and prototyping a ton of different things. One of our advantages, actually just stepping back, is we have access to the home screen and the news feed. And so we're able to get new puzzles in front of a ton of people really rapidly to test whether or not they're really resonating with people. That's kind of the first advantage. The second is we have the mini crossword, which a ton of people are habituated to and love and play every day. So we have a really good benchmark. We use some metrics from the mini to say, if we can beat what we do with the mini, we may have a real hit here. And Spelling Bee, one of the games that the team prototyped last summer, was a big hit, and we've now put it into production. It's now part of our crosswords experience, and we're in the midst of kind of constantly testing new games. And they actually make a new game a month, which is like a pretty quick turnaround, and they're really fun, interesting games. Oh, so we launched Spelling Bee last week. This is Spelling Bee. Highly encourage everyone to play it. It's really fun. And then foundational work, I'll just call it like GDPR and things. Like the team is always going to be working on things that are, always going to be working on stuff like technical debt or design debt or GDPR or whatever else it is. And I think it's important to just make sure we're accounting for it. So that's it. I went through it really quickly, but I would love to answer any questions you guys have. Yeah.
You said that first off, that was great, so thank you.
Okay.
Second off, you said earlier that the parenting team does a much better job of what you guys have done in launching your product. What would you have done differently?
Oh gosh. I think we could have done a better job. We were really just figuring it out at the time. I think I'm very proud of the work that we did, but I think we could have been a little bit more regimented about what are the segments of users that we're going for. So we were intermediate cooks, and found some intermediate cooks who were my friends. And the parenting team, even so far, only 3 of them have started work, but they're being really rigorous about all of the different types of users and all of the different possible needs. Parenting is maybe a more complicated space, but they're being really rigorous about kind of audience segmentation and user needs and kind of the user statements and problem statements. Another thing I think we could have done differently, we developed the product originally for iPad. And this was at the time when the code that you could use for the iPad and iOS and iPhone, you had to build 2 totally different apps essentially. And so we released all 3 all at once. That was totally insane. And an email newsletter product I didn't even have on there. So we had 4 products that we launched all at once. I think we could have been a little bit less. We maybe didn't need to start with an app. Yeah, I mean, and then there were a lot of things I think around right, we didn't actually have a project manager, and for almost the entire time. And I think we could have been better about like retrospectives and team dynamics and like what's working, what's not, because we would do our best to resolve things across disciplines, but I think we could have been like more regimented about it. Yeah.
If I heard you correctly, you said you were developing adjacent products.
Yes.
And that are for incremental audiences, not huge ones. Can someone subscribe to a specific product area and not the whole New York Times?
Yes. So cooking is available for $5 a month. You know, you can subscribe to cooking. Crosswords is available for around $7 a month. It's more regularly on sale. And parenting will be available separately.
And what crossover do you find between those who get the incremental subscription and the broader subscription?
What crossover?
Yeah.
Well, so it gets even more complicated because there are two main price tiers for the New York Times core subscription. There's essentially basic, and then there's the higher price tier, and access to cooking and crosswords is included in the higher price tier. And so in general, if you want access to cooking and crosswords and the Times, you just get that. We call it a bundle.
So I'm going to kind of follow up on that question and ask, how did you go about testing different pricing models, and how did you kind of land at where you are today, and what are you doing to continue to optimize for that?
Yeah, so I can speak to the very early research into pricing. So we were actually assigned an $8 price point. The way that these products came about was McKinsey, the consulting firm, did a big study. They looked at the demand curve and said, we think that you guys can get some demand for New York Times products at $8 a month. Go. and there were very aggressive goals. So their original mandate of cooking, and then we had NYT Now was a product, and NYT Opinion at the time as well. We were supposed to charge $8 a month. I did a ton of work in partnership with someone on the strategy team at the time to try to demonstrate that like other price points in the space. You know, there was a Wine Spectator had a popular app. It was $3 a month. Paprika, which was this recipe saving tool, was $20, and that was that. You know, the price points like $8 a month just seemed really high. And so we initially tried to make a business case to say, if we get more subscribers at a lower price point, we'll still make the same amount of money. So, you know, we should be good. Then we did a bunch of testing, and I think it's really hard to get a clear answer on willingness to pay until you actually get people to pay. So we did the best we could. We did these huge surveys of thousands of people, so statistically significant samples, saying with this beta product, would you pay for XYZ? And people at this price, and then we tested a bunch of different price points. And people said yes, but I think no one even really believed them until we actually put up the paywall. And it's hard, and we actually, if anyone has any thoughts on how to test pricing, that's better. We were like, until someone gives us their credit card, I don't know if I really totally, you know, believe it, but yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about content. You mentioned that some of the legacy content that the Times had used, you know, specialized ingredients, or were really like lengthy recipes. How did the legacy content that you have at the Times, like how were you restricted by that? And then maybe how did the product that you put out maybe influence new content that's generated by the Times and influence the new recipes that they're working on?
Yeah. I should say, I mean, the recipe database is what we call it, is a huge advantage for the Times. So we have now 18,000 recipes. At the time it was, I think, 15,000 recipes. And we have these famous chefs like Greg Claiborne and Pierre Fernet and people who made a lot of like classic, really high quality stuff. So it was a huge asset overall. The thing that was a challenge was that like some of the recipes and many of the recipes were pretty highbrow. So we had a number of recipe writers focus essentially on things that were a little bit more accessible. So we had this woman named Martha Rule Schumann who wrote something called Recipes for Health, and they were simple and healthy. Melissa Clark started to focus more on things that were like a little bit more weeknight oriented. We basically, the cooking staff, since this product launch, have also thought about, can we include things that are inspirational and delicious, but also an easy weeknight meal? And so those have been like kind of added to the database slowly over time. Yeah.
Could you speak to how you tested some of the prototypes and kind of got to the beta when it came to, or did like what kind of testing you did in terms of prototypes or like user interaction or anything like that to get you to the beta, and like how you went through that process, prioritize things,
Yeah.
et cetera?
Yes, definitely. And this is maybe another thing we could improve on. So we built a fully working prototype very quickly that showed recipes. There was pretty decent, not great, but some search functionality. There was something called cook mode, because at the time we thought that it was going to be really helpful to like make the recipe really big and show you the steps individually. And I'll try to think if there are more, but there were like a number of the kind of basic, we tried to meet in a small way each of the user needs. And we thought that there was a user need for cook mode, which we quickly heard there was not. So we built something that we thought that like, and then actually one of the key elements of the cooking product is this newsletter that Sam Sifton writes a number of times a week. And we did a prototype version of that newsletter included with the product itself that was meant to serve the inspiration need. So we released it to, I think, 1,500 people. I think it was 5,000 people, 1,500 of which, for 2 weeks, used it really regularly. And then from the regular users, we interviewed probably 50 of them, like a ton of them, all from around the country. We wanted to make sure that it was people who lived all around America and in different kind of skill levels and who cooked at different numbers of times a week. And we kind of organized all of that and just aggregate. We spent 2 months really digging into what did we learn from this prototype. I think in retrospect, one of the things we maybe could have done differently is it was a very heavyweight prototype and then a very heavyweight process. It was incredibly valuable because it allowed us to really hone in on what are the value propositions and then how do we kind of refine the beta version and make it a lot better. But I think we could have done it in maybe a little bit of a lighter weight way.
I remember you mentioned that you had also worked on the video team, and that as part of the cooking product, there were also instructional videos. So I'm wondering, for the New York Times, is the cost of producing those videos, like, do they balance out with the value that users get out of them?
Great question. So I did work on the video team. That was really more focused around news video. The video team in general at the Times is really their core focus is news video and what we call enterprise at the Times. So ambitious storytelling, and it can be in any area. And it is really not on service-oriented video. And so the cooking team, video is a key component of the cooking product. And to date, until I kind of came back from leave, it has been serviced by the video team, but it's been hard to get resources. And so one of the big things that we're doing with the cooking product now is investing in a nimble, small video team that's just dedicated to the cooking product to make video in a low-cost way that we hope will add a lot of value to the product experience. Most video makes money digitally with advertising CPMs, and that's not something that we're going to do with the New York Times cooking product specifically. So I think we're going to need to figure out we need to make sure that we're really delivering a benefit to users with whatever video we make. But we have a bunch of kind of ways of thinking about that hopefully will be helpful. But it needs to line up to the subscription experience.
As an adjacent product, how do you tie back the revenue that's coming from it as a standalone versus as kind of part of the maybe premium subscription model of the whole New York Times and all the other premium things you get?
So yes, so we have a standalone revenues for cooking and crosswords, which is pretty simple because anyone who signs up for a crosswords subscription, is part of the crosswords product, and that is all kind of tallied up on one P&L. And then cooking and crosswords, we have a system where we attribute revenue back to the cooking and crosswords P&Ls. And we have a somewhat complicated system to do that, but it's really important from my perspective for us to be able to have a handle on how much value are these products delivering to again, what we call the bundle, but the high-priced New York Times subscription, because we want to be able to have a sense of, how is our investment paying off? And to some extent, ultimately, people might not sign up for a standalone subscription and instead sign up for the core. And so we just need to be able to measure that.
Right.
So we have a revenue attribution, basically.
I'm curious, so of your product, what percentage is from kind of bundling pricing versus standalone? You can share
It's
that.
mostly standalone now, but a larger and larger component is from the bundle revenue. But crosswords, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, was just added to the bundle last January, and cooking was added in October. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
When a team chooses to is it a choice to bundle with a subscription? Is it like a conversation that you have with another team? Like how is the decision?
Yes, it is a conversation with another team, and it's actually another team's. We're a big influencer in the decision, but it probably ultimately is it's a core New York Times team's decision whether or not to bundle these into the core.
So as a Times subscriber, I'm aware of another new product that maybe didn't take off like cooking did, which is the watching product. So I'm kind of curious if, to the extent you're involved, you can maybe talk about how that evolved or didn't relative to these other new product initiatives.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in watching, but it's an awesome product. I think totally from a consumer perspective, the team, well, actually, even not from a consumer perspective, just from an internal perspective, the new products team was launched 5 years ago. It then expanded its mission to be called the beta team, and they ended up being like the product arm for all of our features desks. And so anytime a features desk would partner with some part of the product organization, it usually was with this beta team. And so watching was this incredible collaboration between a product team and the culture desk. But they didn't have the same mandate to develop a subscription product and deliver on revenue goals. It was more around creating a really great product experience and then figuring out how we'll monetize it later. And so it was out and it was great, but I think that a decision was made that it probably wasn't going to it wasn't going to be a standalone subscription product, and so it was going to be rolled up into the core New York Times. If that's helpful. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Psychographically, I was just wondering how you're able to figure out which type of audience to hone in on. Like, I know there's a lot of data out there on like age, gender, location, but like from a psychographic standpoint, how did you know where to not spread yourself so that it would audience scope?
With cooking or with each of them? Yeah. I think that we just wanted people who really cooked a lot. I mean, that sounds so obvious, but like people who are home cooks, that actually was something that home cooks was. I wasn't a cook. I mean, in case this is helpful for people, when I joined the new products team, I was assigned to work on a news aggregation product because I'd worked at the Huffington Post before. I then, a week later, was told, actually, psych, you're working on a cooking product. And I was like, I do not know how to operate an oven. I'm just so unqualified for this. But it was really helpful because, in retrospect, I think I found it helpful because I was able to kind of like learn about different cooks. And just from an emotional standpoint, like people who were passionate about cooking or had an interest in becoming a real kind of proficient home cook.
Would you mind if I extended that question to the other categories that you work with as well?
Yeah. Well, I think for crosswords, I mean, people who love the crosswords puzzle, but they tend to be intellectually curious and want like an intellectual challenge. And I think so that's like slightly different, obviously, than the cooking audience. And then for parents, there's just a lot of needs for information, I would say. And you're kind of like, and I think that's something that we're in the midst of trying to sort out and being a little bit more clear about exactly which types of parents of ages, which needs are we going for? Yeah.
Maybe we could do 2 more questions.
So a question about like the launch itself and also kind of the goals related to that. So when you, I guess, at what point did you start defining like this is success or not? Because you like define all the stuff up front around like what you're trying to build and why. When did you say like this is what we seek to achieve as part of that process? And then separately, just kind of with that, like when can you talk through when you were just looping in like what types of key stakeholders throughout this process? Like is marketing building that brand right there in the prototype phase, or kind of how did that work?
Oh yeah, I should include. But yeah, so on the first one, before we launched the beta, I have a slide which I didn't include, but it was like I totally made up. We looked at Epicurious and Yahoo Food and Martha Stewart and all recipes, and we were like, we should be able to beat Epicurious, and I think we should be able to do it pretty quickly. So in 2 years, I want to have a bigger audience than Epicurious, and I think maybe, I forget, all recipes was something like 20 million, Epicurious was maybe 8. I was like, let's go with 10. So that was how we decided how many unique users we were going to get in 2 years. And then a big goal at the New York Times is registrations, and we wanted something that was like a very specific engagement metric that wasn't about, at the time, that was kind of the easiest proxy to use. So we came up with a very ambitious registration target, which we also put a 2-year kind of timeline on. But registrations are part of making the cooking, in order to use the recipe box for the cooking product, you have to be logged in. So we thought that there was, that was one of the ways that we would indicate success. Are you actually finding value from either the email newsletter, which you need to be a registered user to get, or the recipe box. And both projections were literally like the team like tracked them after I moved on to the team, but they would like come down and be like, your slide is so creepy, It was kind of exactly how it ended up playing out, but really by luck. But it was more just like what do we think we should be able to do? Yeah.
All right, I have the last question. I guess given the fact that this is a talk about innovation, how have you factored into like your product roadmap some of these new sort of like interfaces that have been kind of coming up? So how do you think about conversational UIs or voice UIs, especially like leveraging the context of like very specific context, right? So when someone's cooking, they're most likely either in the kitchen or they're grocery shopping, and how do you build sort of newer experiences to accommodate kind of the infiltration of like Alexa in the home or a number of these other sort of technology layers that have now been enabled?
Yeah. I didn't include this on there, but for 2018, one of the big things that the cooking team was going to tackle was how do we future-proof ourselves? And Alexa was the big platform that they were looking into. How do we think about the connected kitchen? And actually for cooking, that's even like a connected fridge. There's a lot of interesting stuff there, too. So they did a bunch of prototyping on Alexa specifically in January and February, and March actually too. And the Alexa, the product experience with an individual, it just like the experience stunk. So you'd have to say, Alexa, search for a chicken recipe, and it would be like, here's chicken recipe 1. And you'd be like, next recipe. And then you'd be like, here's chicken recipe 2. I mean, it was just horrible. It was so much easier to actually search for something on your phone. Then we tested some things with, actually walking you through the steps And that was way harder than using it on your phone. So it ended up just being a bad experience for cooking specifically, but it is something that we think a lot about. And then you'd think, oh, this should be something, you should be able to talk to Alexa in the kitchen, but not yet from our perspective. I don't know. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex.
Thank
Let's
you
give her
guys
a round
so
of
much.
applause.
Thank you.
I know. I'm sure everybody has more questions for Alex, but Alex will be around, so you can go grab her afterwards, since we still have a half hour of networking and fun and pizza and beer and wine, etc. So really quickly before we break to that, a few things. So obviously we have a raffle. Everybody has their tickets still. Very exciting. This is maybe the second highlight of the evening after our wonderful talk. We have the, thanks to DigitalOcean, Sammy slippers, very plush, very nice. And I also have a couple of products that count moleskin notebooks. So Michael, do you want to pull out the first number?
Okay, it's 379746. 379746.
All right, we'll do it again. One more, Michael. Keep your numbers, people.
379726. 379726.
Oh my goodness. One more
Did
time.
we do these wrong?
All right, one more time.
379733. 379733. Okay, nice. Finally.
Emily, would you like to pull the next number? Emily is one of my product managers at One Kings Lane.
379737.
All right. For the big one, Terrence, would you like to pull the Sammy slippers? Terrence is also one of our product managers at One Kings Lane.
379732.
Are you going to model this for us? So really quickly, the one last thing that we do as well is shout outs. So very important. I think just to continue building a community here for product managers. So if you are looking for work, or you are recruiting, or you have a product that you want people to use, come right up. You have 15 seconds, your 15 seconds of fame to share. Don't be shy. Anything, UX, engineering. I'm sure there are a lot of people hiring, so let's get started. Just come on up.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Afshan. I work for Getaway. We're a startup that builds tiny cabins in the woods for people to escape to. We're outside of New York, DC, and Boston, and we're growing very rapidly. So our marketing team is looking to hire another marketer, someone to help us with our local grassroots efforts and help us expand as quickly as we are. Reach out to me if you're interested.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cecilia Shao. I just started work at a really amazing seed stage startup called Comet.ml. They help data scientists compare, track, and manage their machine learning experiments and workflows. Obviously, it's like a very hot space. So we're looking for back-end engineers, specifically engineers who know Java and maybe people who know R. So just reach out to me. I'll be here. And maybe I can share my email somehow. But if you know anyone, if you're really good friends with a great engineer, please let us know. We actually work across the street inside the 2 Sigma co-working space.
Hey, I'm Michael. I'm a volunteer here at Products Account, and I'm a UX designer, and I'm looking for a new UX opportunity. So if any of you have any leads, come talk to me, and I'll tell you about why I'd be a great employee. I do. I do work freelance. I'm open to that.
Anybody else? All right. Couple of quick announcements. So obviously, product, we love to hear feedback. So you will receive an email, maybe already, from Products That Count. It has a short survey. So I ask you guys very humbly to fill out the survey. It just takes a couple of minutes. It helps us out because really we want to make this programming better. We're not even a year old in New York, so please help us, provide your feedback. Anything and everything, we are open to listening. And then also because it helps our speakers. So we want to share that with Alex. There's also a bit of a speaker rivalry that goes on because we do our NPS scores. We average 50, which is pretty good. And so let's help Alex be at the top. So do take that survey. Second thing is our speaker next month is Jason Rodriguez, who is the VP of Product and Engineering at SoulCycle. And he's going to be talking about how they created a revolution with SoulCycle and the role that product has played in that revolution. So please come. That is going to be, I think, June 18th. I want to say the third Wednesday in June. So that should be really fun. And then lastly, DigitalOcean recycles. We sell pizza, we have beer, but make sure you're throwing out in the right receptacles. Thank you for coming and have a great night. We're here till 9 p.m.